So how does a failed peace deal spiral into a global crisis in just a matter of hours? You get a single social media post that triggers a naval blockade, splits the world's alliances, and even sparks a bizarre shadow war fought with AI-generated cartoons. It's a wild story. Let's break it down.
Here's the roadmap for how we're gonna unpack this. First, we'll look at the moment the peace talks completely fell apart. Then, we'll dive into that explosive naval blockade order. From there, we'll see how it literally divided the world, creating these massive diplomatic rifts. We'll also track the economic chaos it unleashed, and finally, we'll get into the very weird, very modern digital propaganda war that erupted.
All right, so where did this whole mess begin? Well, it all starts in Islamabad, Pakistan, with these incredibly high-stakes peace talks between the United States and Iran.
Yeah, you have to understand, after 40 days of war following the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, this was supposed to be the off-ramp. This was the hope for a diplomatic solution. But when these talks failed, poof, hope vanished. And as the source says, the game completely, totally changed. Things were about to get a lot more dangerous.
So why did they fail? Well, honestly, the two sides were just worlds apart. The US came in with this hefty 15-point plan. They basically demanded Iran dismantle its entire nuclear program and completely cut off funding to its proxy groups, militias it supports in other countries. Iran shot back with its own 10-point plan, demanding an end to the war, money for damages, and for sanctions to be lifted. But the real deal breaker? The US said the issue of Lebanon had to be handled separately by Israel. For Iran, that was a red line they just would not cross.
So with diplomacy completely off the table, what happens next? Well, President Trump took to his platform Truth Social and made an announcement that sent absolute shockwaves through the entire global shipping industry.
Think about that phrasing. No warning, no grace period. Just bam, effective immediately. He declared that the U.S. Navy was going to stop any and all ships passing through the strait, said they'd clear mines, and even threatened to blow to hell anyone who dared to fire on them. This was, for all intents and purposes, a declaration of total maritime control.
And this is where the chaos really kicks in. Trump's post, his political proclamation, was wildly different from the official military orders that came down from CENTCOM. He's yelling immediately, but the military says Monday at 10 a.m. He says any and all ships, but they say only ships going to or from Iran. Imagine you're a shipping company. This huge discrepancy left everyone completely confused and, frankly, terrified to move their ships.
So you've got this confusing, very aggressive blockade now in effect. How did the rest of the world react? Well, this is where you start to see these major diplomatic fractures splitting longtime allies right down the middle.
First up, you have unwavering, rock-solid support. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came out almost immediately, making it crystal clear that he was in lockstep with the U.S. He said Israel fully backed every single action the Trump administration was taking.
But on the complete other side of the spectrum, you get this furious pushback from one of America's key allies. The UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, basically went public with his frustration. He stated, in no uncertain terms, that Britain would not be dragged into another war and did not support the blockade. You can almost hear the exasperation.
France also drew a very clear line in the sand. President Macron clarified that, yeah, they had Navy ships in the area, but those ships would only be used for peaceful multinational missions. It was a very polite, very diplomatic way of saying, we are not helping you enforce this blockade.
And this table just lays out the diplomatic battle lines perfectly, doesn't it? You've got the U.S. and Israel in this hardline alliance on one side. And then on the other, you've got major European powers like the UK and France, and even Turkey, all basically saying no thanks and calling for diplomacy instead.
Now, this wasn't just some political argument happening in fancy meeting rooms. Oh no. This had immediate, real-world economic consequences that were felt pretty much everywhere. Let's trace that financial fallout.
The second that blockade was announced, it was like it choked off a major artery of global energy. Crude oil prices shot past $100 a barrel. In the U.S., gas prices jumped over $4 a gallon, hitting everybody at the pump, and the overall inflation in the American economy tripled.
So, how did Iran respond? With a chilling economic threat of its own. The message was simple and brutal. If you shut down our ports, we will attack other ports in the region. That was a direct threat to key facilities in places like Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
But here's where the market did something nobody expected. Usually when there's war or major conflict, the price of gold skyrockets, right? It's the ultimate safe investment. But this time, it plummeted. So what gives?
Well, traders were betting that soaring oil prices would force the U.S. Federal Reserve to keep interest rates high to fight inflation, and a high interest rate makes the dollar stronger, which, in turn, makes gold a less attractive investment. It's a weird bit of market logic.
And this is the most crucial part. These weren't just numbers on a screen. The fear of stagflation, that's that toxic mix where the economy stops growing but prices keep rising. It hit the real world hard. It actually contributed to the loss of nearly 100,000 manufacturing jobs in the U.S.
So beyond all the naval posturing and the economic threats, a truly bizarre and very 21st century propaganda war was being fought online, with artificial intelligence as the weapon of choice.
I mean, things got so intense that even the Vatican felt the need to weigh in. Pope Leo issued this powerful statement, basically saying that the root cause of war is a delusion of omnipotence. And you don't have to read too far between the lines to see that as a critique of what he saw as arrogance coming from the U.S. administration.
And this led to an absolutely astonishing digital showdown. In response to all the criticism, Trump shared this surreal AI-generated image of himself looking like a Christ-like figure, literally healing someone. At the exact same time, this mysterious Iran-funded group called Explosive Media started pushing out these bizarre, Lego-style animated videos that just relentlessly mocked Trump, using really sensitive topics like the Epstein files and George Floyd against him. It was a propaganda war like we've never seen before.
And all of this, the blockade, the divided allies, the economic chaos, the AI cartoons, it all brings us to one critical, unanswered question. The temporary, really shaky ceasefire that's been holding things together has an expiration date, April 22nd. What happens when that clock finally runs out?
And that really leaves us with a pretty stark reality. You have Iran believing it's winning, and you have the United States absolutely unwilling to back down. So this whole naval blockade and all the diplomatic fallout, it might not be the main event. It could just be the prelude to a much larger and, frankly, a far more destructive regional war.